Welcome everyone. We're so happy to have you here today. My name is Amanda Martin. I lead communications for the Global Impact Coalition. And I'm here with an all-star cast of panelists. So I'm very excited to introduce you here. Also, I think it's really important and interesting that we've been able to gather a real diverse perspectives here on our panel today. So I hope it's a good discussion. So we have Richard Haldimann, who is Chief Technology and Sustainability Officer at Clariant and our Chairman of the Executive Committee at the Global Impact Coalition, bringing the perspective from the industry. Very important. And then we have Pattabi, who is from Senior Managing Director and Senior Partner and the lead of the Global Chemicals and Energy Practice at Boston Consulting Group, bringing, I think, a more macro perspective, trends and insights. And then we have Tjark, who is the CEO of T&O, which is one of the leading research and development agencies or service providers in the Netherlands, but working really on a global level, and working also bringing the perspective from the research and development and innovation side. And last but definitely not least, Tjark Tjin-A-Tsoi, the CEO of the Global Impact Coalition, bringing the perspective of a coalition that I think is working really, as you'll see in the discussions today, to put into practice collaboration in a very tangible way. So we're here today to make this session more interactive. I don't know how many sessions and things you've been to, but so we're going to start off with a short panel presentation, and then we'll pretty quickly move into discussion groups. And actually, we'll do it a little bit like maybe you had in school, where this half of the room will go this way, and this half of the room will go that way. So we'll, just to let you know, the first part is recorded, but the discussion is not. So feel free to, also we can follow Chatham House rules, feel free to open up and have a good discussion on the topic around collaboration. So today we are talking about collaboration in the chemical industry. Maybe just a quick show of hands. How many of you work in or with the chemical industry? Okay, I think pretty much everyone, which is great because, as you all know, chemicals touch 95-96% of all the man-made products around us in our world. So pretty critical. So even those that think they don't work in or around the chemical industry, I would argue that they probably do. And therefore it's kind of up to all of us to play a role to work on also the sustainable transformation. Another quick question for you. Today we're talking about how to really put collaboration into practice. How many of you from your organizations would feel comfortable sitting down to meet with your biggest competitor to plan a project together in the near future? Okay, good. Spirit of collaboration. This is great. I love it. So that's exactly what we're trying to do at the Global Impact Coalition, and I think this is really, I think, the mindset shift that us as leaders sitting here in Davos probably need to bring in and bring back to the world, which I think needs still this transformation to a real collaborative mindset. So I hope that today we're going to also share some real life examples, and I also ask the panelists to try and use examples whenever possible to make it more concrete. And sometimes it's easy to talk in the ether, but we need to think about these concrete examples of what are also some of the challenges and how do we overcome them, and how do we get, whether it's getting legal like documents in place, or making sure that we have clarity around rules. How do we really collaborate in a good way? So thank you all again today, and we'll kick off with our discussion. So maybe to start us off, first, Charlie, can you tell a little bit about the Global Impact Coalition, what it's trying to do, and kind of how does it encourage collaboration in this tangible way?
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks, Amanda. So essentially, collaboration, is really at the core of what we're doing. We are a collection of some of the leading chemical companies in the world, incubated at the World Economic Forum, and then around a year ago spun off into our own entity. SABIC, Clariant, amongst several others, are founding members of the Global Impact Coalition. Essentially, what is the core focus? It's looking at, as the chemical industry, with the related value chains, as we go on this journey towards net zero, what are the areas, what are the opportunity areas where it makes sense actually to go together, but very much led from the business perspective. So I think if you look back sort of the last decade or so, sustainability within organizations have sort of operated in silos, right? And it's only recently been that, okay, how do we get sustainability integrated into the operations? How do we get it integrated into essentially the financial decisions of the company? And this is really, really important, right? So how do we essentially make sustainability investment grade? How do we make it bankable, right? It's because otherwise it's going to be very difficult to build up the sustainability case unless it is rooted really in the economic viability case as well. So this is essentially the core focus of what we're doing, right? So on one hand, we have a very well structured ideation process between all the different companies. Okay, what are the areas where companies are willing and able to collaborate? How is that best structured? What does the business case look like for that? We also work with Boston Consulting Group, putting this basically all together with essentially very strict, let's say, gates, very clear deliverables, so that projects that make sense go forward and projects that don't make sense don't go forward, which is also a learning opportunity for us and obviously the companies involved. I think what's also very interesting is, and this is what now we are looking at the Global Impact Coalition level, the companies who are part of the GIC, what are the technologies that are existing within the companies that have a significant positive impact and can be significantly scaled at a much quicker rate through the Global Impact Coalition platform than they would have done if they just sort of existed within the company. So this is obviously, I would say, even more the low-hanging fruit and something that's very, very crucial, of which we're looking at. So I mean, we anyway have several projects which are moving towards spin-off, so to essentially piloting. So we have, just to give you a very brief example, and I'm very happy to share more with any of you afterwards, but the end-of-life vehicles, there's obviously regulations coming up in the EU as well, which is, end-of-life vehicles are not really set up for circularity, at least from the polymer side. So how do we, as a consortium of companies, then actually create a viable business case, work with the assemblers, the OEMs, the dismantlers, the sorters, to create a business case which can make sense also for the individual companies of that project. And then we have several other research and development projects going on at the moment. And actually the initial one we created whilst we were under the World Economic Forum is now sitting with TNO, which is essentially a lower TRL plastic waste technologies, mechanical and chemical, which is really growing, I think, at a very good speed. So maybe that gives a bit of a summary and context as to what we are doing. Very much rooted in what is the business case driver for the sustainability case, and then what is the collection, the optimal group of companies within the GIC and external stakeholders that we can basically pull in to give and accelerate these projects to give them the best chance of life.
Great, thanks for the overview. And maybe then we'll turn over to you, Richard. Considering the recent political developments, ... and also economic challenges, facing the chemical industry in general. How does the industry maintain its focus on progressing really toward net zero and a circular economy? And how does collaboration play a role?
Yeah, I think for Clariant, it's core to our purpose. So I mean, we're not going to give it up simply because there's a ripple in the political dimension at this point, and we've also anchored that in the corresponding targets that are midterm targets to 2030, etc. And so this is something that we see as being critical, that we stay the course. We also see that fundamentally there's a market for sustainable products. Yeah. And there's also widespread, across political parties, there's also a widespread agreement that we should do something to protect the world, and that there is no question that this is something that should be high on the agenda. And this is actually, even in the US, Republicans as well as Democrats agree that something has to be done. Where the disagreement comes in is how to actually achieve this. And I think that the cost equation here is absolutely critical. And I think that's where we, as an industry, really have an opportunity of looking at what are the best technologies that we can bring together. And that's why it makes sense that we're working also in a platform with competitors. Actually, I would like to sort of just take that up briefly. The chemical industry is an interesting beast, right? So our competitor is also our supplier, is also a customer of ours. I mean, so the chemical industry does a lot of business amongst itself, and so this is not something where we would have sort of a classical I'm going to beat you out, but really it's we're already today in a very collaborative environment. I think when it comes to sustainability, it increases the level of potential collaboration, because we're all faced with the same challenges. Now, for Clariant, the sustainability transformation may be a little bit easier because we're a specialty chemicals company, and we can redesign our products and bake in sustainability from the start, and also get a premium because we have a better performing product that also has a sustainability dimension. I think it's where we really have a challenge is in the base chemicals, and how do we decarbonize base chemicals, and how do we make that economically viable so that we have new value chains that are going to be able to build up. And that's where we come in also, again, because for us it's absolutely crucial that we understand what the criteria are to actually make this work. Now let's just take the example of circular plastics. We manufacture additives that go into plastics. Certain additives are better compatible with circularity than others. And you need to actually bring all of these different, the polymer manufacturer, the resin manufacturer, the manufacturer of the additives, and then also, and this is actually the beauty of the GIC, the waste companies that are actually taking the waste. Now they're no longer a waste company, so they're not just going to incinerate this, but they're actually going to recycle it. And this can be a chemical company, or it can be a company like Suez, who has recently joined the GIC. And now we can start thinking together, what is required in terms of the design of this new value chain and all the products that are in this value chain, so that we're able to have an economically viable, technically feasible new value chain. And I think that's where this collaboration aspect really becomes very powerful. And also, just to build on the example that Charlie brought, the recycling of the polymers out of a car, I mean, this is something that for any individual company is not interesting. Yeah? So there's not that much polymer of your polymer that you're interested in any given vehicle that you would have a big project as a chemical company to see, oh, how can I recycle it? How can I get it back? No, but overall there's 100 kilos of polymers in every car. If we're able to generate a process that automatically provides high quality polymer, used polymer out of a car, and separate it and goes back to all of these different companies, then we have a value chain that is interesting. So that's why the companies in the GIC, the polymer manufacturers in the GIC that are also looking at the recycling of these polymers are super interested in doing this together, not alone. So I think that's where you see that this idea of collaboration really can make a big difference. And then where you as an individual company, where you just you can't move the needle.
That's great. And of course, not just we need the companies to collaborate together, but it's also around the broader network, right? Bringing in different players who can assist and work on some of these innovations and things. Maybe turning over to you, Pattabi, what would you say are some of the strategic trends or innovations that really are emerging as critical levers to help this transformation in the chemical industry? And what are there any kind of new ideas for joint business model innovation as well that you see happening that you can share?
Thanks, Amanda. And Amanda and Charlie, thanks for the long-standing collaboration with the GIC and BCG. This is a bit of a multi-part series, so maybe just to catch you up on the prior episodes. I mean, and some of these facts are well known to the people in this room. When you do the total math on the decarbonization potential in the chemicals value chain and what the premium it would mean for the end products, it's in the single digits percentages, right? Somewhere in the 1 to 5% for most products. So it's not that expensive. Most of these things are known in terms of what we can and should do. So why doesn't it happen? So this is kind of where we've been stuck in the model of what is the market design or the business model that'll make it work. These are long value chains, especially for base chemicals, maybe a little bit less, shorter value chains on the specialty chemicals. Goes through many converters, distributors, etc. So by the time you see it at the other end, it's actually hard to see, who is paid for what and what is the carbon footprint of it, right? So I think just being able to actually have the signals that carry all the way through is one thing. Second one is there's a handful of markets where people are willing to pay the notion of a green premium. It's actually harder to see it in very large portions of the market, which means that you need to have big investments that go into this in order to get there. And then the third thing is, of course, there's always going to be twisted terms in the broader societal environment, political environment, etc. And the chemical industry is also a commodity-based business, so you essentially see some cycles. So we need to kind of manage through all of those things. I think the main thing, Amanda, I think this is where we need to turn our attention to, which is how do we actually have these market design where these signals can actually flow all the way through. Is it a product carbon footprint? Is it carbon accounting? Rather than focus on country level or company level scopes 1, 2, and 3, but actually at the product level and having the accounting that gets us there. Now, this is a pretty big industry, and what I just said probably takes decade plus to actually get done. So maybe starting in a handful of sub products where it's more feasible, and to be able to make it happen. I think there's companies in here that have all the innovation and the technology to make the decarbonization happen. It's just a matter of how do we actually have the price signals that get there. And whether eventually it is in the form of a price signal or a regulation, those are all up for debate. But some other parallel sectors, whether it's shipping, is a good example where they've been able to, through the IMO, institute standards that get us to some level of either regulation or price signals. So that's that's a little bit of just trying to put these pieces together from a macro trend standpoint. And this is where companies are trying to go. And this coalition here is going to be an important element of how do you make these things happen.
Yeah.
Maybe I just want to strengthen that argument, or just chime in there, because I think it really is probably the single most important aspect. How do we get the signals to the end market, right? I mean, how do we create a market for these sustainable low carbon products? And I mean, it's economy 101, right? I mean, if you don't have any transparency, you don't have market. And I think today, if you go into a shop and you're buying shampoos, and you would have a complete different carbon footprint for these two products, right? The consumer cannot make the decision. And it might sound trivial, but this actually would be an enormous, powerful method, a reliable carbon footprint on consumer products that could create new markets. And then the 2 to 3% at the end product level is maybe 50% in an early stage, and then it gets thinned down over the development. But that premium cannot be pushed through if it's not pulled by the end market. And so I think that understanding, and I think that this is also an opportunity for us, right? I mean, if we're driving this topic of sustainability, we can create a market, but we can only create a market if the end market actually sees this difference. And there, I think it was a colleague from Unilever who was saying, listen, they've done this research across the world. There's a market that is exactly capped at 10% of people that actually pay a price premium for sustainable products. But there's 40% that say that they would. And they call it the say-do gap. Well, I think a factor 4 is too much for a say-do gap. I think the say-do gap maybe of 30% or something like that would be acceptable. A factor 4 for me is an indication that there's a trust gap. So that people that are looking at products today in the supermarket that have all these sustainability claims that are still quite unregulated, that they just become very cynical and say, listen, this is all crap. But they do believe, if they look at the products or the salt and the sugar and the thing on the food, they believe that because that's regulated. So I think there's a real opportunity here with relatively simple legislation, just to set a standard. Do it maybe for one or two verticals to start out with. And then just grow it from there. So I really wanted to emphasize that point. I think it's a great point.
That's great, and certainly I worked in the past on the European initiative on the product environmental footprint, and it's not that simple, unfortunately. But for sure, collaboration is needed, and I think this is where the chemical sector, being at the base of this kind of long value chain of products, and also being at the end of it, right? When we talk about circularity, I think has a critical role to play, and that's where the collaboration is so important across the industry, right? To think about also the how do you share a bit the cost of the transformation, and if it's shared among all of them, it's not going to be so incredibly high for just one piece of the value chain to pay the price, right? Tjark, maybe turning over to you a little bit to talk a little bit about how do we get there from an innovation standpoint and R&D, excuse me. Typically in the past, especially the R&D departments maybe have been kind of the well-guarded secrets. That's the space where you need a special badge to enter and a special badge to leave, and nothing comes out. How do you break that barrier and collaborate on this kind of historically secretive space on R&D and innovation?
Well, it's of course very difficult because these companies usually are competing in a market that is very competitive. It's also a difficult market at the moment, so the market is under pressure. So the incentive to collaborate is not always there, unless it's to make maybe a cartel, and that's also not what we want. Of course, from the research and development departments, you get your competitive advantages often, so this is why it's so carefully guarded. So there must be some overarching reason to collaborate. That's the first thing that you need. Everybody has to agree on the overarching reason to collaborate, and it must be a very strong reason. And I guess in this case, there is a strong reason. I don't think it's a financial reason, because these companies are so big. They could probably foot the bill just from a financial point of view, but they have so much knowledge in their organizations. So all these 7 companies or more, now, they have so much proprietary knowledge that they can share and then bring the ball forward towards the goal. And that is, I guess, the main reason why for them it is necessary to collaborate. Also, probably they would get to the finish line in some time, so maybe in 10 years, 20 years. The main reason why collaboration at this point in time is so important is that the time is running out for them, so they want to do it now. They want to speed it up, and for that reason collaboration becomes very essential.
Mm-hmm. And maybe Charlie, you can build on that a little bit in terms of from your experience with the Global Impact Coalition, what are some kind of practical ways that you've been able to break down the barrier, especially on some of these innovation spaces, to get companies to share and to really collaborate on that side?
Yeah, I think, listen, at the end of the day, companies have to want to collaborate, and not all companies do, frankly. So it's very important that we are able to understand also what is the driving force for the companies to want to be to develop a certain opportunity or be part of a certain project or business case, and then there inherently has to be a level of trust that has to be built up. And I think we see this also. We have our executive committee, which also Richard is on. When we now after and Walid, as well. I mean, now when we are speaking together and we have very regular meetings, it really sounds like actually everyone is part of the same company. And I think this is actually a very, very rare thing to have, and it's not easy, frankly. I mentioned that we we started our journey at the World Economic Forum. We were there for quite a while, just understanding, okay, what is the optimal governance process that we need to put in place that protects the companies, that makes them feel comfortable to share ideas and so on, but also allows flexibility for things to actually get done. And this is, I think, really, really important. So we did spend quite a lot of time being able to build this up. And I mean, from my, having also, I was previously at the World Economic Forum, you see a lot of different initiatives sort of come across the desk. Some of them work, some of them don't. I think the ones that haven't worked, when I've sort of looked into a bit the structure, it really is because there wasn't enough time invested in actually building this trust, building this governance structure. Okay, what are the boundary conditions that we all agree make sense to operate under? What is everyone's role? Everyone has to be very, very clear about this, and it is quite complicated and complex. But I think you almost have to go back to basics and sit around with the companies in the room. What is it really that we're trying to achieve here? What is in it for the individual companies, but then what is in it for them over and above their own role, but really from an industry level as well. So I think this is important.
Abraham Lincoln used to say, when I'm going to cut down a tree, I spend 80% of my time sharpening my axe. And that is certainly true for this type of collaboration. You really have to be upfront, very clear on what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, what the governance is, and then it can work.
Creating the safe space, right? Yeah, Richard?
Yeah, no, and I think what is very important is that already early on, you don't only look at the technology, but you look at the business model that you're actually going to be pursuing after. So, again, just to take the circular automotive plastics project, here it's totally clear what is in it for the individual companies, and they're interested in actually getting access to these polymers. So, and it's totally clear what the collaboration is going to entail, and where then the individual company, namely the actual recycling of the polymer, that's proprietary. That's part of what they do. But since they have different polymers that they're actually recycling, it fits perfectly, and so that's why the collaboration there is very easy. So you really need to understand early on what role is each individual company going to play while you're developing sort of this idea of what is the project that you're actually going to execute.
And thanks for naming a concrete project. We've been maybe talking too much in the ether. We need to bring it down to concreteness. Speaking of that, could you also share, Tjark, a little bit about one concrete output that I think started from the, well, it was when it was the low carbon emitting technologies under the forum and out of the Global Impact Coalition, the R&D hub for plastic waste recycling. Maybe you could share a little bit about around what is that and how is that working in a very concrete way.
Yeah, so it started around 2 years ago when these companies came together and then decided to do joint research, and I guess it was before the time that I joined TNO, but it was exactly at the same time. I now realize, but then they decided to give this hub to TNO, and we started to organize it. I'm not certain exactly why, but probably it is because we have a long-standing experience with this type of collaborative effort in the Netherlands. We even have a name for it in the Netherlands. We call it the polder model, which means that all the parties should bring together at the table and try to collaboratively come to some goal. The idea is that these parties work together in projects. There are 4 projects that have been designed together, and then periodically they come together again in the General Assembly to kind of evaluate and modify and then continue. And this year actually there will be a kind of evaluation on how the next level type of projects will continue. The projects have been mostly geared towards separating. These materials are compound materials, composites. So you have to separate them, you have to collect them, separate them, and then you have to start worrying about how can you then recycle them. And it's very complicated when you go into the details, the chemical details, and this is what they've been working on.
Great. I think any other...
Just maybe add on to something you just said. I think there's a lot of the collaboration efforts that are going on that end up at the project level, trying to figure out, can I make a setup very is specialty product that has a set of performance features that somebody would pay a premium for potentially, right? And so you end up in trying to get the right collaboration mechanism to get the product off the ground. Then we need to actually get that project turned into a product business, eventually a business, right? And so this is the scaling issue that the industry has got, which is how do I go from projects to products to a business? And the issue gets bigger the further away in the further upstream you are in the value chain. If you're a more basic chemicals manufacturer versus a specialty chemicals manufacturer, and I think without wanting to be a broken record, I think that's why we need that transmission mechanism that creates the market to then take what he's describing and then try to immediately scale it from a project to a product to a business, right? I'm sure there are examples here that everybody has got, and you have an example of something that's very specialized that actually can decarbonize a process that now it needs a business model to be able to take and put into a plant and decarbonize it that somebody would pay for. Anyway, that's these are great examples, and now the challenge will change from identifying those projects to creating a model by which it can be scaled quickly.
Actually, in our Brightland circular space, which we have already for 5 years, I think, we have kind of an approach where we look at the entire value chain, as you say, because you can do all these intermediate steps, but then nothing will happen in the end, right? It will be a nice science project, but then nobody will take it up. So you will have to look at the whole space, the whole value chain, and we are doing that as well, and that has already been going on for 5 years.
That's great, and maybe we mentioned it quickly, but the automotive circular plastics project, and Charlie, if you wanted to mention something on that about how the value chain is also connecting there, and so critical to actually making a circle, right? The chain into a value circle.
Yeah, I mean, in short, we're basically moving towards a pilot to understand exactly this now. So we're taking X number of vehicles. We're working, as I said, with the disassemblers, the sorters, the shredders, to understand also what is the cost to do something like this. If we were to do it at scale, then of course it's really for the companies to then take this material that's relevant for them to understand how that would fit into their system. What would be, let's say, the opportunity there. So that we can ultimately be able to create more of a closed loop system here. So this is a project that we're launching, piloting in the next sort of 1-2 months, and then it's a bit of a sort of a fact-finding mission as well for us, and a data collection mission. So